Both good things and bad things come in threes, apparently, because just 24 hours on from a trio of feel-good announcement at the annual Fans Forum, QPR shipped 3 at home to Hull City, marking their third defeat of the 24-25 season and second on the spin. It's a result that makes it just 1 win in 8 for Martí Cifuentes in the Championship and 9 overall, opening the possibility of ending this game round in the bottom 3 for the first time this season, should Stoke, Preston and/or Portsmouth pick up the necessary results on Wednesday night. As usual, I'm going to give my take on this QPR performance, so if you somehow enjoyed 10 plus minutes of me complaining, make sure you hit like and subscribe to the channel. After the lows of Blackburn away on Saturday afternoon, Christian Nori tactically pumped up a fairly safe BAU fans forum with 3 positive announcements on Monday evening. Long-term extensions for Jake Clark-Salter, coaches Martí Cifuentes and Xavi Calm, and the confirmation that Karamoko Dembele will be joining on a permanent transfer next summer. You can make that 4 if you include the news that Director of Performance Ben Williams, instrumental to our long-term fitness last season, remains employed by both QPR and Brooklyn Nets as confirmed in a post-forum chat. Whether you're a skeptic that feels media managed by how said news was broken, or a believer that feels it's yet more evidence that Nori really knows what he's doing, it's all good news and most of it wouldn't have happened under his predecessors. Whether you believe in him or not for the long term, for me, since he arrived as our new CEO back in January, he's barely put a foot wrong at the helm of the club so far. The clever deals executed that month, having told us in his opening interview that none would be possible, immediately coincided in a drastic uptick in form that led to our survival. And there have been a steady flow of sensible business decisions in the 9 months since. It meant that while an announcement like Jake Clark-Salter signing a long-term deal may have come initially as a shock in the room, this kind of news is pleasantly becoming less of a surprise. But what is surprising though is how we've started this season on the pitch, because this is a team that has inexplicably forgotten the basics of football that Martí Cifuentes so carefully went about restoring to this side when he arrived nearly a year ago. For the most part, the confidence, decision-making, rock-solid defending and courage reinstilled by the Spaniard has seemingly evaporated, and none of it looks like returning in the imminent future. Now, long-term viewers of the channel that saw my championship prediction video at the start of August will know that while I've very much been a Cifuentes fan since his arrival, I wasn't crazy enough to have us down as playoff contenders like even some neutrals did. I had us down for 15th, preparing for a season of consolidation after 2 years of struggle, so maybe this lackluster start shouldn't be so much of a surprise to me after all. The thing about a mid-table season though is that on paper it should bring both highs and lows, as well as some pretty boring times too. It suggests for the most part patchiness, consistent inconsistency, periods of form and periods of struggle, probably a hefty chunk of the season where you fear you're in a relegation battle, and maybe if you're really lucky, a patch where you're deluded enough to think that you might be outsiders for the playoffs at some point. The worry is, 2 months in, there have been way more lows than highs so far. Now, I will caveat for absolute clarity before I say what I say about this match. I'm not saying right now I think we're going to be in another relegation battle just yet, and I'm not saying the manager has to go or anything reactionary like that. My concern right now is that in 8 league matches of football, we've pretty much only played 2 decent halves, both in the second 45s away at Luton and Sheffield United. We appear to have forgotten the basics of what made this team so much better in the second half of last season, and so far Martí hasn't really been able to remedy these early issues over the course of 11 matches in all competitions. And with this latest loss against Hull City, these issues seem to have really come to a head. With Varane's suspension and Colback out injured, the team pretty much picked itself, with Madsen taking Varane's place and Anderson returning in attack at Smith's expense. As I'd hoped for the weekend, both Chair and Fox were on the bench for the first time this season, but for counterbalance and to really bring down the mood of his extension, Jake Clark-Salter was absent from the playing squad for the 3rd time in 4 games. This was unfortunately another poor home performance. The strangest thing though is that not for the first time this season, we started the match like a house on fire with 5 shots on target in as many minutes, which is 5 times the amount we had away at Blackburn on Saturday. It began with some Dembele trickery into the box, teeing Madsen up for a blocked shot that fell for field to beautifully volley into the bottom right, but Ivor Panda did well to stop it at his bottom left, and he recovered well to push out Lucas Anderson's resulting header. Koki Saito, one of few QPR players I was impressed with last night, cut in dangerously from the left wing a couple of minutes later, carrying it for what felt like an age before releasing the trigger just inside the box, but Hull's keeper made another fantastic save to keep us out. Jimmy Dunn was then up next with a thunderous effort from outside the box, but he couldn't quite get his effort on target. And I'm sorry to all involved, because I did say at this point to my girlfriend and my dad that after all those chances, Hull City would probably score from their first shot, and I was half right because it was their second. I'll spare you the usual rant, but in summary, once we eventually left Hull's half after our 15 minutes of madness, we really struggled once again to progress out from our own. We can't play out of the back, it's as simple as that, and until we stop trying to, I just can't see us winning many football matches. We gradually invited pressure, which Hull City gladly applied, the slip-up started, and for probably the third time at home this season, we struggled to cope with the wide men, which were Balumi and Liam Miller this time, the latter of which was comfortably the best player for Preston North End at Loftus Road back in April, while on loan from Basel, and couldn't quite believe his luck every time Haverton Santos gave him 2 metres of space on the ball. This was a really rough half in general for Santos. He kept giving the ball away, and I think someone might need to check if that's not Todd Kane in a costume, because he does not look like a comfortable right back. As I say, Drama's opener on 25 minutes was only Hull's second effort after Palmer's lofted shot on 16 minutes. It came after another trio of shots from our Danes, with Madsen and Anderson both being blocked on 18 minutes, and Anderson then blasting over the bar on 23 minutes. This really seems to be a consistent theme this season. We have to really battle and toil for our chances, nothing drops for us. But for other teams, it takes 1 or 2 balls and they're at us instantly. We are so easy to attack. Now the goal is obviously a worldie, which Nardi can do nothing about. It's lucky to bounce to him after the deflected ball into the box, but it is preventable. That's 4 times this season we've conceded these kind of goals now. Hamer, Whittaker, Travis, and now Hull City left-back Drama in just 8 league games. Some said I was a bit too harsh when I criticised us for allowing Whittaker the time given the deflection his took, but I stand by it because we've conceded another just like it. Once or twice is unlucky, but any more than that and somebody isn't doing their job. Hull consistently took short corners in this half, with 2 players camped on the edge of the box to take a shot if it fell to them, and not once were either of these spare men marked. And I've flagged this season already that we seem to be defending with 11 men back at corners, and I'm yet to see us put somebody on the halfway line. Stick Dembele up there at least, and one of those players can't be camping ready for that shot. We can't be defending with every man back at 0-0. QPR have had a knack of finding immediate replies this season, but that didn't happen against Blackburn, and it did not happen here. Between goals 1 and 2, we only got worse, and this team looked like strangers to one another at times. The regression in some of our players is bewildering. What has happened to goal-scoring midfielder Sam Field, now once again incapable of completing a forward pass, and barely able to string together one sideways or backwards that goes more than 2 yards? What about Lucas Anderson, ready to push on with the first goal of the campaign against West Brom, who was so insistent on dribbling in our own box? Heads dropped, no one was talking to each other, and this was some real deja vu. But somehow, at the death of the half, QPR were thrown a lifeline, starting with Drama fouling Dembele on one of the few times we switched it to our wide man. It gifted us a free kick in a dangerous position outside of the box. We looked like we had initially spurned, but Lewis Coyle for some reason fancied trying to high-five it, and before you know it, we had ourselves a penalty. So who takes these for QPR in 2024-25? Why, Westerlo, 8-time penalty extraordinaire Nicholas Madsen, of course, and after a long old setup from the ref, boy did he take it, smashing it into the top left of the crossbar and in. I must admit, I thought it had bounced out from my seat in the upper loft, but this was a beautiful pen. Out of nowhere, we had one back, and we ended the half like a firecracker relit, revved up again for tackles and challenges. And if we wanted to get back into this, there was that lifeline. Now, it's worth noting at this point that around 30 minutes into this match, at long last, Elias Chair warmed up on the touchline for the first time this season. And so I doubt I was alone in thinking at half time that if we brought him on at the start of this second half, we might have half a chance here. Anderson, still looking very much off colour, was the obvious candidate for replacement. I wouldn't have been surprised to see Santos go either given his first half, but Cifuentes instead opted for a change at the front, bringing on Sella for Mickey Frey. And you'll notice that is the first mention of our Swiss striker, who really looked out of puff after those first 15 minutes. As it goes, this change wasn't too bad at all, because our press and energy was totally different for the next 15 minutes. We were shutting Hull down from the front, hassling them, trying to probe for mistakes, and suddenly Hull were the team struggling to play out from the back. In fact, just like the first half, all the initial efforts here were QPR once again, with 5 in the next 10 minutes from Sella, Anderson and Koki, with the Japanese wingers being the most dangerous again, where he cut in once more on 52 minutes and struck the right hand post from the edge of the box. In spite of this team's low confidence, his does appear to be building. And our build-up was improved during this period, even from the back. Jimmy Dunn, now operating more as a left back with Powell pushed up the pitch, looked to hit Sella with long balls and send him in behind, while the likes of Field, Madsen and Saito were starting to combine a little bit more effectively. Anderson was playing in a much more advanced role here, almost as a second striker, and he looked a much better player for it. But after this initial 15 minutes, we started to run out of puff, and we soon faded once again. Recognising his side's waning grip on the game, Hull manager Tim Walter made a double sub on the hour with the fresh legs of Mellum and Zambrano in the middle, helping them to restore control. By contrast, unusually Marty's changes only weakened us as the game went on. Paul Smith replaced Anderson on 65 minutes, and if you are a Smith naysayer, then boy you would have had a field day watching him here. He was decision paralysis embodied, and his play can be summarised by simply saying that all he ever did was run the line, get himself into a good position, only to check back rather than cross, let everyone reset, and then put an ineffective ball in. He's not the only one at fault, but he seemed to just really lack the bottle to go for it. And by this point, with Hull having returned to the ascendancy, Miller was back causing problems out on the left, muscling off Santos to the byline on the hour, and nearly setting up Bellumi for the third. And 10 minutes later, he came back to finish the job himself. If you need an example of how ineffective our midfield is this season, you only need to watch the build-up about a minute before this one. One of the Hull City midfielders slipped on the ball in the centre of the pitch, got himself back up and then just sprayed it across to the right before any of the QPR midfield thought about troubling him for it. The ball eventually found its way out to the left to Miller, deciding this time to take on Santos on the inside instead. The Brazilian blocked his shot and it bounced awkwardly away from the Hull winger, but somehow he still just found enough time to rattle off another shot for good measure, wrong-footing Nardi and going into the bottom left. How's that for luck? Now here comes the most frustrating part. With the game now 3-1, Elias Chair, not at any point prior deemed ready to take to the pitch for the first time this season, was now immediately ordered up off the bench and ready to join the pitch. Did you say your name is Gareth? The only thing more insulting than that was that Dembele was the one taken off to make way for him. All season we've wanted to see this pair together, and as soon as Chair's back, the other one's off to the bench. I really hope that's not a sign of things to come, because both are going to be needed together on the pitch this season. It was just quite sad to watch from this point onwards. No one was moving, no one got near Chair whenever he did get on the ball, and Smith completely spurned a lovely ball in behind when our number 10 really should have just hit it himself. Alfie Lloyd came on at 88 minutes himself, but Hull remained the only team that looked like scoring, and the game soon fizzled out at 3-1. Now only a month ago I was gutted to see QPR approaching an international break, and now with one match to go on Saturday, I am desperate for the next. With key players returning, some hopefully minor injuries to nurse, it gives Marty another opportunity to go back to the drawing board. It's just quite staggering really how quickly we seem to have regressed from the end of last season after the progress we've made from the start of the year. I might not have personally seen us as a team that was going to be tearing our way towards the playoffs, but I didn't think it was impossible that we would be building on the foundations we built in the second half of last season, of being a hard team to score against and ultimately beat. And we've still not figured this home form out either. That's over 2 seasons now that we've struggled at Loftus Road. As Jack Supple pointed out on Twitter with this stat, no one in English football is worse than us at home. Many have said after most results this season that the new players need time, which I do agree with. No one can be written off at this stage, but it is worth noting for balance that most teams in this league, not least Hull City, Blackburn and West Brom, have all had squad turnovers more significant than our own, and don't seem to be suffering anywhere near the same teething issues. And I have to mention too that it's not just the new players, there are many of the players that were in this team last season that are not performing to the level we've come to expect from them either. The fact that players both new and old are struggling does suggest to me that the core of our issues right now are tactical. We've seen a large portion of this squad play badly under Ainsworth and well under Marty, so that's evidence enough that this team can do it. But this current arrangement doesn't shine a flattering light on them. The playing out from the back needs to go first, and we potentially need to look at changing shape because this team just doesn't look comfortable with whatever the game plan is right now. We need to get our wide players on the ball as much as possible because Koki and Karamoko are where we're dangerous right now, and we need to stop exposing our defence so willingly because that is the other team's job. Derby away is now a chance to shake things up before the break. We've got to go and get a win there. They've lost 3 on the bounce. And I really hope Marty takes that chance rather than sticking with the same game plan for one more game before the break. Anyway, that's enough of my ranting. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this match. If you have somehow enjoyed this moan, then do hit like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video for my Derby match preview. Cheers!